You're listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in. Glad to have you with me. Today, we dip our toe into the water of LSU-Vanderbilt, kind of give our first overview of the Commodores. Let you hear what Brian Kelly had to say when he previewed the team as well. And, of course, we'll talk plenty of Diego Pavia and the challenges that he presents to LSU. Moving on from that, we will recap LSU's victory over Charleston Southern in the PMAC on Tuesday evening, 77-68. The Tigers overcome a sloppy first half to really take control with about 12 minutes left in the second half to kind of salt that one away and improve to 4-0 as they get set to head to the Greenbrier, where they will take on Pitt in their opening game of that preseason tournament over there at Greenbrier. So we'll punctuate the show with that. Be sure to subscribe, like, share. Please share and subscribe. Get the word out a little bit more about this. Follow me on social media as well, on Twitter X at Musso Matthew, Facebook, Instagram. You can find me on all of those places. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, LSU-Vanderbilt. We've kind of gotten to this point before we've really dove into the game, because I get it. The game isn't what really everybody wants to talk about that much. It's more or less, the future of the program and the problems that exist. How can you fix them? Things of that nature. But LSU has 2 games left, and it's important that they win both of them. So let's kind of dive into it a little bit. Vanderbilt on the season. They come in with an identical 6-4 record as LSU, as well as an identical 3-3 record in the Southeastern Conference. It's been a year for the ages for the Vanderbilt Commodores, especially when they've been able to play home games, and especially when they've been able to play some of the teams considered at the top of the SEC that would normally just dominate Vanderbilt. Missouri was ranked 7th when Vanderbilt went there. We know what happened. They lost on the field goal that could have sent it to double overtime. They also missed a field goal at the end of regulation that could have won them the football game, but ultimately they lose by 3 in that one and took a top 10 Missouri team at the time. I understand what Missouri is now, but at the time, to overtime on the road. The very next week, they would beat the number 1 ranked team, Alabama, in Nashville. Vanderbilt's first win ever over a top 5 AP ranked team. And it was legendary. That's when everybody really looked at Vanderbilt and went, okay, wait a minute. They got a shot here. They lost by 3 on their home field to a top 5 ranked Texas team, where Texas had to survive an onside kick at the end of that game. They went on the road to Jordan-Hare, tough place to play, beat Auburn by 10. This is a Vanderbilt team that I don't want to say, has overachieved, right? Because I'm sure everyone in that building had plenty of belief coming into this season. But when you look at Vanderbilt's standards, they have absolutely overachieved this season, and Diego Pavia has a lot to do with that. A dynamic player at quarterback, dual threat, but where he really scares you is with his legs, and obviously that is where LSU has been most deficient here in 2024 from a defensive standpoint. But speaking of defense, Vanderbilt's got a damn scrappy defense as well. So while Diego Pavia is, the dynamic guy on offense that's really kind of pacing them there and helping lead them to wins, like Vanderbilt doesn't win these games that they have. Like, they don't upset Alabama without Diego Pavia. So he is, yes, first and foremost the main reason, but that defense, y'all, has been incredibly gritty and scrappy, and they fight, scratch, and claw for everything that they get. Brian Kelly, on Monday, when he talked about Vanderbilt, he led with the offense, and here's what he had to say.
The offensive structure has changed. Diego Pavia leads their team in rushing, completion percentage at 60%, tough, hard-nosed player, and he is the guy that makes it happen for him. Alexander's a really good back. I really love the tight end, Eli Stowers, and Quincy Skinner, a really good wide receiver. So this is a talented football team with a veteran offensive line.
So, look, you look at numbers, right, for Diego Pavia in the passing game, they don't blow you away. He hasn't cracked 2,000 yards yet through the air, so you're thinking, okay, is he really a dual threat? But it's that number that Brian Kelly just pointed out there, 60% completion. He's extremely efficient on his attempts. Also, a great ratio, 15 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. That's kind of the big thing with Pavia. He has protected the football. For a guy who is not very big, who is undersized, he has done a fantastic job this season protecting the ball, both in the passing game, but also in the running game as well. He is Vanderbilt's leading rusher, 628 yards. He averages 4 yards per carry. And you heard Brian Kelly also mention Cedric Alexander. They make a fine 1-2 punch back there in the Vandy backfield, each with 5 scores. Alexander is, at 3.8 yards. So both of them really averaging 4 yards a pop there. It is a elite backfield. And LSU's seen a couple of really talented backfields as a whole. For the most part, everyone's going to point to the Rocket Sanders, Lenore Sellers game, and that was a big struggle. For the most part, LSU has really been able to hold running backs down. It's been the quarterback running the ball that has been the biggest issue for the Tigers, and they faced some really good backs this year as well. Since that South Carolina game where LSU allowed a running back, Rocket Sanders, to go over 100 yards, LSU has allowed just one more running back. That's the emphasis here, running back, to top 100 yards the rest of the way. That was Henry Parrish against Ole Miss. Every other team they faced, they've held the running back down. And like I said, you face Le'Veon Moss and Jam Miller, Jaden Ball. Like you saw Montrell Johnson for a little bit against Florida. You've seen good backs, and you've held the backs down. The quarterback's been the issue. So can LSU stop Diego Pavia? Well, the sample size, the recent evidence tells you no, that they won't be able to. That Diego Pavia will have success on the ground running the football, and that's what's ultimately going to keep Vanderbilt in this game potentially, and potentially give them a chance to win it. I would love for LSU to go out there and prove me wrong, but until I see it, there's just really no reason to believe that will happen. Brian Kelly did say something interesting about Vanderbilt's offense, though, on Monday. He comped it to the triple option. He said it's basically triple option. Like, said it kind of reminds me about preparing for Army and Navy back when I was at Notre Dame. For what's worth, LSU played Army last year with a really suspect defense and shut them out. Actually played them really well. Now, it's like triple option. It isn't totally, right? But that's what Kelly said. So how do you go about stopping this Vanderbilt offense? And he said it comes down to one thing.
I think you have to have a different mindset when you go against this offense. This is truly assignment-oriented football, and you have to be disciplined. Much like what that offense brings you is they want to catch you undisciplined. They want to catch you doing something that's not your job. So the big focus this will be disciplined and getting your job done in all 3 phases, inside, out, and on the perimeter.
Discipline, assignment, all things you would hear about in defending, an offense, but specifically one with plenty of triple option, principles in it. So we'll keep an eye. We'll keep an eye on that. It's interesting, man, because when you look at Vanderbilt in like the national rankings offensively, they aren't gonna blow you away. It's kind of right where you expect Vanderbilt to normally be in most of those. Vandy, they're 79th in passing offense. They are 84th in rushing offense, even with Diego Pavia. They are putting up points, though, with Pavia, as they are averaging 28 points per game, and that has them 64th in the country in scoring. But not going to blow you away statistically in national rankings. They're about middle of the pack in the SEC, and that's where you see the improvement, because normally Vanderbilt's at the very bottom. And, man, Diego Pavia has a lot to do that. We can get a little bit more into how they stop him, what they might do when we give our final thoughts and preview. But that's just a little bit of an overview for you on the Vanderbilt offense. To the Vanderbilt defense, here's Brian Kelly.
well acquainted with Clark. He's done a great job of building this program. 6-4 this year with a great win over Alabama, Kentucky, and Auburn. It's a tough and physical defense. They play it in a manner to keep the points down, and I think defensively just do a really good job in terms of balance against the rush and against the pass.
Balance is a great way to describe them. Like, there are talent deficiencies on the other side of the ball for Vanderbilt on defense, but it doesn't show with the way that they play. That team goes after the football, they rally to it, and they just play so hard. And they do play balanced. On defense is where you do see some eye-popping numbers kind of for Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a top 40 scoring defense this year. Vanderbilt is 36th against the run in America this year. Now, LSU's had a little bit more success running the football against Florida last week. We'll see if that can carry over, but, Vanderbilt's rush defense is better than Florida's. So you're actually taking a step up there this week if you're LSU. Statistically, it's better than Florida's. In the past, they do still struggle, but quite honestly, LSU's passing offense has taken a step back, kind of like everything, since the second half of Texas A&M. You lack that number one receiver. Separation has been a problem. Rhythm on offense has been a problem. You got Brian Kelly holding a play sheet down on the sideline now, as well as Joe Sloan up in the booth. And Kelly talked about that on Monday, where Sloan calls the plays, but they go through Kelly's headset as well, and it has to match his vision for the game. And Nussmeier can hear both of them. And how much is that throwing off the rhythm as well? We talked about lack of rhythm plenty. You're not finishing drives. Rhythm's going to be a part of that. Also, getting behind the sticks is going to be a part of that because that breaks your rhythm too. But completion percentage, the passing game has been a struggle for LSU and Garrett Nussmeier since that second half against Texas A&M. Normally, you'd look at Vanderbilt giving up over 220 a game to the air and be like, okay, that's a place LSU can exploit it. Hopefully they can, but we're gonna wait and see. The other thing I'll go to with Vanderbilt, and I do this to really give you a comp, and because I love the statistic and the metric of it, is stop rate. Vanderbilt has a stop rate of 60% on the season. It's not going to wow you where that places in the nation. But I bring that up to tell you this. I think the best way that I can describe Vanderbilt's defense is they comp very similar to LSU's defense before the second half against Texas A&M. And we dove into stop rate big time that week leading into that game because LSU was very comparable at that point to A&M's defense. LSU at that point had a stop rate, I believe it was 62% on the entire year. And in their last 4 games leading into their last month after the South Carolina game, their last month leading into the A&M game, it was like 67 or something. I don't have my notes in front of me from that. Forgive me. But Vanderbilt at 60 to this point in the season. And what did we talk about with that LSU defense at that point? Yeah, man, look, they've got some talent deficiencies. They're playing hard. They're playing hard, and Weeks is emerging and all that. Like, that's Vanderbilt. And we all felt pretty darn good about that version of LSU's defense. So I would tell you I think Vanderbilt comps pretty similarly to that on the defensive side of the ball. Knowing how you felt about LSU's defense up until that point in the season, you should probably respect Vanderbilt's defense pretty strongly. And that's kind of what I would where I would comp them to. Is that to say they're going to go out there and dominate LSU? God, I hope not. But I didn't think Florida's defense, missing a starting linebacker, arguably their best tackler at that position as well, missing 4 defensive backs, didn't think they'd hold LSU to just 1 touchdown, 16 points total in the ballgame. But they did. So, and looking at this overview, and like I said, we have time to dive deeper, but LSU's got a lot of questions to answer going into this game. It's not just, can you stop Diego Pavia? That's going to be big. But can you finish drives? Can you establish the rhythm needed on offense? Can you finally get some separation? Can you finally build on the success you had running the football in a game? And then on the other side, can you stop the running quarterback that's just been such a thorn in your side this season? We'll see. for what it's worth, LSU in that ball game is a substantial home favorite, I should say, over Vanderbilt. The Tigers right now a 7.5-point choice. That line opened up around 9 on the early line. Okay, let's switch gears. Close out the show with some LSU men's basketball. Matt McMahon and the Tigers, they improve to 4-0 on the year, a 77-68 win over Charleston Southern in the PMAC. They now will head to the Greenbrier to start that tip-off event with Pittsburgh on Friday. Pittsburgh's a very good team. We'll have some time to break that down as well as we get throughout the week. But the Charleston Southern game, first of all, glad they won. This was one that you had to have. Charleston Southern came into this 1-5. Statistically, obviously, they were not a very good basketball team, and I haven't gone deep dive into their projections for the season or anything like that, but this is when you needed to get it because it would have been a loss that could have definitely haunted you come March, and you got it. But it was not without trials, especially in the first half. We talked about this on Tuesday's show. Letdown spot for LSU. You were coming off that win over Kansas State. Big victory on the road. True road game in front of 11,000. You were a 7-point dog going into that game, and you dominated. And everybody kind of perked up and said, well, wait a minute. Hold on. And you heard for 4 days how great you were. And then you had a 1-win team coming into the PMAC. It wasn't going to be 11,000. It was going to be a little sleepier. And LSU struggled early in this game. They could not keep Charleston Southern out of the paint. It looked like the size really bothered them on the offensive end and on the offensive glass. Charleston Southern had 13 offensive rebounds in the first half. 13 offensive rebounds in the first half. On the offensive side for LSU, Cam Carter picked up 2 early fouls. He's been your leading scorer so far in the season, so he had to sit. That was about with 13 minutes left in the first half, so you were without him for a large period. It took Jordan Sears a long time to get going as well. Only 3 points for him in the first half. But what you did have, once again, was Victorious Miller. And Miller turned in, I believe it was 13 in the first half for LSU. Actually, I might have shorted him a few. It might have been a little higher. But he had 15 in that game against Kansas State. He had at least 13 in the first half, I should say, against Charleston Southern. He's going to be really special, y'all. And he made some massive plays down the stretch in this game that we're going to get to. So he's going to be really special at LSU. You can just honestly look at him and tell. The other thing that really hurt LSU, they only made 1 3-pointer in the first half. They were 1 of 6 at the break, shooting 37% total from the floor in the game. It was ugly. There were plenty of turnovers as well for the Tigers. And ultimately, they found themselves down 34-29 at the break. And you're thinking, oh no, you got to make some serious adjustments in just about every phase of the game. And LSU did. And they really dominated the second half when you look at it in totality. But again, it didn't necessarily start off that way. You look up at the 12:35 mark, and LSU is down 52-50 with 12:35 left in the game after Victorious Miller makes a jumper. And that's where the game started to change. Charleston Southern would take it down the floor. Kelly, who had just been a complete issue all night for LSU, has his shot blocked by Damian Collins. It begins to head out of bounds. Jordan Sears, full speed on one leg, diving out of bounds, taps the ball ahead up the floor to Victorious Miller. It was a perfect pass, if you want to. I mean, it's what you kind of have to call it, ahead. He's outruns 2 guys. I mean, he looked like a receiver just running past and getting to the ball, and he did that. So Sears, basically on the line almost, swings it ahead to Miller. He outruns, grabs it, goes up for the layup, gets bumped way off course, body's contorted, but he throws it off the glass and in and gets the and one. Ties the game at 52, but what it did mainly, it brought the crowd to life for the first time in the PMAC all night, and that is where the game began to change. He would miss the and one, so the game remained tied, but after the teams trade baskets, a Kelly jumper puts Charleston Southern up 58-56, and then on the ensuing possession after an LSU miss, Victorious Miller comes up with a huge steal with about 8:56 left in the ball game, breakaway dunk, and that ignited a 14-0 run for LSU to ultimately help them close the game. And the other thing that did it, the Tigers improved shooting tremendously, but the offensive glass for Charleston Southern. We told you Charleston Southern had 13 offensive rebounds in the first half. They had 5 in the second. They had 5 offensive rebounds in the second half. LSU more than cut it in half. They really started to dominate the boards. Ultimately, they would end up tied when LSU was down 26-13 on the boards at the half. They end up tied on the boards to end the ball game. So that was massive in that regard. And offensively, told you LSU shot 37% in the first half. LSU ended up shooting 50.8% for the game. Jordan Sears really came alive, ended up with 15 points to be your second leading scorer. Jai Bailey had 11 points. All of those came in the second half as well. And then Victorious Miller would finish with 19 for the game. And huge plays down the stretch. And that's where you can look at this kid and say, okay, he's going to be special. It's not just the fact that he's scored 15 points against Kansas State and followed up with 19 against Charleston Southern. It's the plays that he made down the stretch. Being there on the receiver, like having the awareness to run the floor when he sees the ball heading out of bounds, knowing somebody's going to just tap it forward because you never know who's down there. And then having the athleticism and concentration to make that layup. It's coming up with that steal when your team's down 2 and the energy's finally back in the building, coming up with that steal and having the breakaway dunk that ignites the 14-0 run. That kid, he's going to be special at LSU. I thought the rim protection was very good again for the Tigers as well. 7 blocked shots in the ballgame, 3 of them from Kentucky transfer Damian Collins. Another solid effort from Corey Chest as well. 22 more minutes. He had 8 and 6, and he blocked 2 shots. You love what you're seeing there from the New Orleans native true freshman. So all in all, y'all, that was a really good win for LSU. You would have liked to have seen them dominate it a little bit more, but again, it was a letdown spot. And you had to fight, scratch, and claw your way through it. That's going to happen. And they did it. So that's another good learning experience. How you handle success. And now you'll go up to Greenbrier. You'll face a really good Pitt team from the ACC. And you'll have a chance to face a ranked Wisconsin team in your second matchup there. You're going to learn a lot about this LSU team going forward, especially starting this weekend. But ultimately, the early returns, they're 4-0. And they've had some impressive wins, honestly, so far on the season. Program still looks like it's heading well in the right direction. Matt McMahon and the group off to a really nice start. All right, that's going to wrap it up. Subscribe, share, like. Greatly appreciated. Follow me on social media as well. Like we said, Twitter X at Musso Matthew, Instagram at Matthew Musso1. You find me on Facebook as well. It's greatly appreciated. Be here next time for more on LSU Daily.